On August 4th of this year, French tourists David and Ornella Steiner died, it seems from heat exhaustion, while hiking the Alkali Flat Trail at the White Sands National Park in New Mexico. Their 9-year-old son Enzo, who was hiking with them, survived. And since this terrible accident, only a couple of weeks ago, I've been asking myself, how could this happen in an area that is so civilized? We're right next to the White Sands missile base. Where the couple died was only a couple miles from a road, basically. How could this happen? So I wanted to go out there, and fellow Sun News reporter Diana Alba came with me as well, and we walked a little part of the Alkali Flats Trail, only maybe just over a mile, mile and a half, to see what it was like out there. How could this couple, who apparently had been to the American West before, have died so quickly? They went out there in the middle of the day. That's not recommended. Didn't have enough water, it seems. Only a couple of 20-ounce bottles of water, it looks like. So we went out there, Diana and myself, and I'm a photojournalist for the Sun News, and you can read Diana's article about it in the paper. And I thought, well, as long as I'm there taking photos, let's shoot some video as well to give people who are not from the area or haven't visited some sense of what it's like out there at the White Sands National Monument. And a few things hit you right away. There are warning signs. Signs that tell you, hey, there's not going to be water. No more water past this point. And signs in a bathroom that say, hey, you've got to have this much water. But if we go out there, we see something very, very striking. The landscape is very striking and, in a sense, disorienting. And one of the first things that struck me when I got there, I was reminded of the photographs taken by astronauts from NASA on the moon. And you see these rolling hills, right? You look at these photographs and you go, oh, look at these rolling hills. These can only be X number of hundreds yards or a mile or so away from where the photograph is taken. And that's not the case at all. Often those, what we call hills in these photos, or Thinker Hills, are actually mountains many, many, many miles away. And the reason we think they're hills is because we're evolved, we're adapted to our environment. And in our environment, when there's something in the distance, it becomes hazy, right? Because we live in an ocean of air. Just like fish live underwater, we live in an ocean of air. And if something is far away, it gets a bit diffuse and the color shades towards more of a kind of a bluish tint. But you don't have that on the moon, of course. There's no air. So something that is very far away we assume is close. And I say all this, I ramble on that tangent because I'm reminded of that here at White Sands, in the sense that being there in these strange white gypsum fields, not quartz sand, it's a different kind of sand. It's fine and it gets in everything. It feels like you're not adapted to the environment. It feels like it's outside of one's experience, almost like you're on an alien planet. So you think you know where you are, but are you really? Now, if you see here on the Alkali Flats Trail, there's markers. And they say, whatever you do, if you can't see the next marker, don't continue. But the sands are constantly shifting. Look at this, for instance. Here's one of the posts, but it's almost completely obscured and buried. You have to kind of dig out a little bit to see that it actually says the word trail on that. So the landscape, the dunes can move, they say, up to 35, 36 feet a year. The landscape is constantly shifting. And if you're not familiar with the environment, it can be doubly disorienting. I lived many years abroad, mainly in the UK. And whenever I had friends who would visit, we would go and visit here in the American West. They were always stunned because they were not expecting how large America is, the United States, and how extreme it can be. So when I had heard that of this terrible tragedy that a couple had passed away, my first thought was, well, I wonder if they're from Northern Europe, where you're just not as used to the environment, though I do understand that they had been to the West before, as I alluded to earlier. But the question here for me is, what is to be done? How do we prevent these deaths? There are signs that say bring water, but in my experience, just that one short, brief trip with Diana, my fellow reporter, the signs didn't seem extreme enough in terms of their graphic design. There's this one sign here that greets you as you enter the trail, and it says, be prepared for the unexpected. And then in smaller type, what are you doing tomorrow? The answer could depend on what you do today. Appreciate the poeticness of it, but then there's a subhead and it says, drink plenty of water, and then in smaller print, otherwise you could suffer from headaches, dizziness, bad moods, or ... death. And that doesn't seem enough to me. We've all been in parks where there's a sign that says, hey, people died here. And that's what I feel after my visit there. The landscape was so extreme. This poor French couple only had a couple of bottles of water, a couple 20-ounce bottles of water. I had 5 in my pack when I went out there. I went through one of them while I could still see my car in the parking lot. So the question is, why not a sign that says very clearly in multiple language, in big black type, people die here? And that might seem crass, it may seem simplistic, but people do die here in the white sands. And so the question is, maybe good graphic design, strong illustration can help save a life. Because how long is this going to continue? How many people are going to die out here in the sands? Because if you're in a park, you just say, hey, I'm in a park. You're in civilization. We're in a civilized area. A park implies a place of safety and fun. But this is a strange, beautiful place. It's full of nature's terrible wonder, almost unlike any other place I've seen on the planet in my travels. And so maybe we do need to do something a little bit stronger to warn people. This is a place that's outside of your normal experience. You've got to be very, very careful.